Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. In this video, I will be reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy for the first time in 2024. I do know about the Grisha trilogy. I have never read the books, but I know the show is really popular. And earlier this year, I have read the continuation, or not the continuation, the spin-off series that is right here beside me, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, and I liked it very much. Also, the sun is like doing a weird thing right now, so the light might change throughout this intro. Please bear with me. But yeah, I have read the Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom duology, and I absolutely loved the characters. I was a bit confused with the beginning of Six of Crows just because I was not that familiar with the magic system. And from what I understand, the Shadow and Bone trilogy is our introduction to the world of Grisha. So in this video, I am going to be reading all three books of the Grisha trilogy. I have here Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, Ruin and Rising. I am a bit scared because I do know that this series or this trilogy has kind of mixed reviews. Specifically for the first book, I feel like there are a lot of people like hating on it. I am really curious to see why. There were some people on threads that said not to get my expectations too high, specifically for the first one. So I'm going into this with very low expectations, but in the same time, I know it's Lee Bardugo, so how bad can it be, right? Famous last words. Also, this is going to be a full-on spoiler reading vlog. So if you did not read the books or if you have not watched the show and you don't want to be spoiled for either of those, please click off because this is going to contain spoilers from these three books. Also, this trilogy has a lot of spin-offs and companion novels. So on top of the Six of Crows duology and the King of Scars duology, we also have three other companion novels for these books set in the Grisha world: The Lives of Saints, The Language of Thorns, and The Demon in the Wood. After I read these three books, I also want to read the companion novel Demon in the Wood. This is very reflective, so I will just like take off the dust cover of it. This is, from what I understand, the backstory of the villain from Shadow and Bone. So after I finish with the trilogy, I will read this one and I will keep the review for this one spoiler free. You will have timestamps in the description down below, also chapters on the YouTube like timeline thingy. That being said, let's get to reading the Shadow and Bone Grisha trilogy and then the Demon in the Wood graphic novel. Okay, so I have finished reading the first book in the Grisha trilogy, Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I do have kind of mixed feelings about this one. First of all, I want you to keep in mind that this was written in the early 2010s when love triangles were really popular. This book has that. At that time, the chosen one trope was also really popular. This book also has that. 16 years old girls falling in love with ancient men. This book also has that. So um, when you're putting it in that light, this shouldn't work, but it does. It's not the best book that I've ever read by any means, but it's also not horrible. There were some people that were saying to manage my expectations with this one, and I can agree with that. This is not the caliber of Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom or other Leigh Bardugo later works like Ninth House or The Familiar. It's definitely not that. Now, what I appreciate about this book is that Leigh Bardugo's writing sure is not as polished as her later works, but even from the beginning, she was able to create this atmosphere. This is very fast-paced and engaging, even from the beginning. It's a testament to Leigh Bardugo's talent because, again, this was written more than 12 years ago, and even though it's not my favorite, it still stands up and it's very representative of those times. This book made me feel nostalgic for the early 2010s, even though, again, this is the first time when I actually read the book. It made me nostalgic for that specific period in my life. Now, if you've never actually read this book, or if you don't remember what happens in this one, we are following Galina Starkov, who is just like a normal girl, but literally on page like 30 or something like that, we find out that she has magic, which is to be expected with a YA fantasy book from early 2010s. There are some things that don't really make sense. For example, in the beginning, when the Darkling discovers that she is the Sun Summoner and he can use her basically to achieve his goal, she's very set on the fact that she didn't know that she has magic, she didn't know that she's Grisha, and all of her life she basically was living in this lie. But later on, when Alina is training to learn how to use her power and to learn to summon her power with ease, she has like a breaking point, a breaking moment where she realized, wait, actually, what I said at the beginning, it's not true. All of my life I've been suppressing this power, and that's why I'm this like pale and tired all the time. And that was the first moment where I was, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. Also, after she has this realization that she was suppressing her powers mostly to stay close to Mal, she's just like able to turn on and off her sun summoner power, magic, whatever. Don't know really how to feel about this because it doesn't really make sense in the economy of the book, but also doesn't make sense for her as a character because prior to this moment, she was very timid and shy and reserved and didn't believe in herself, and now all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I'm the Sun Summoner and I can actually use my powers for good, which is a good thing. It just came kind of out of nowhere. Also, towards the end of this book, we have another one of those moments where she has a very sudden change of heart, where she kind of realizes that she can't be controlled by the Darkling after he placed that collar made out of the antlers of the stag around her neck. Up until that point, we as readers are led to believe that once the Darkling places that collar on Alina's throat, he will have full power over her and she will not have free will anymore. While they are in the Shadowfold and they're like battling something, I don't remember exactly, she has this like very short moment where she realizes, but wait, maybe the power of the stag can be used for good as well, and maybe I can use the power of like mercy and love to control the stag's power. As soon as she thinks that, she is just like able to resist the Darkling's command. Does it make sense? Not really. Is it very convenient for the characters? Sure. Does it set up the next book? Yes, it does. So I can't really be like too mad with these things because, again, this is intended to be a YA book, but there are little moments like that where I really struggled with this book. I wanted to say the majority of this book, but that's not actually true. Half of this book, let's say, is just like a makeover montage where Genya is tailoring Alina to look like all the other grisha. What message are we trying to convey here? That everyone should be the most beautiful person that ever lived and everyone should desire or aspire to have the same features and stuff like that. I don't want to get into that discussion here, but it was just something that kind of made me uneasy at times. Also, another thing about this one that is not necessarily like a bad thing, but it's just something that I noticed. The plot twists. What plot twists? This is very predictable. You're telling me that you're naming your villain the Darkling and you're expecting me as a reader to think that he's the good guy for the majority of this book? Absolutely not. When Alina was shocked that the Darkling is actually evil and he's trying to use her power to achieve his motives, I was like, weren't you the smart one? Like, weren't you supposed to kind of see what was happening? But in the same time, she's only like 16, 17, whatever age she is, so Speaking of age, the Darkling is 120 years old and he's trying to manipulate and use a 16 years old. Not to mention that he's kissing her, and I will not go into detail, but they were on the verge of doing something else. Also, Zoya makes an appearance in this one. She's kind of like a brat, she's kind of like a mean girl, but she will appear later in the Six of Crows duology, so she has kind of like a redemption arc there. But yeah, I am very pleased with myself that I finally read this book, and I kind of understand why this book is so divisive. As I said, not a perfect book, but it's not bad at all. This book made me really excited on what's gonna come in the next two books of this series. And now, as I will continue my journey with reading the Grisha trilogy, I am going to move to the next one, which is Siege and Storm. On the back of the book it says, "The Darkling caught my cheek with his hand, and when he spoke, his voice was almost tender. This is just the beginning," he whispered. Alina thought she could run from her past and escape her destiny. She can't. Mal hoped he's done enough to protect the girl he loved. He hadn't. This sounds like a description from Goodreads, but okay. The Darkling, more powerful than before, is hungry for revenge. He needs Alina. Soon Alina must choose between her country, her power, and the man she loves. We still don't know who's this man she loves because she has a thing with the Darkling, but she also loves Mal. So I think Molina will be endgame, but we'll see probably in Rune and Rising. Okay, so soon Alina must choose between her country, her power, and the man she loves, or risk losing everything to the oncoming storm. The amazing sequel to Shadow and Bone by New York Times bestselling author Leigh Bardugo. Okay, so my prediction for this one, because now I do have both the background from Six of Crows and Shadow and Bone, what do I predict for this one? Because we are in that region very near the Shadowfold. This doesn't have a map. Oh, okay, this doesn't have a map. Anyway, I'm gonna use the map from my copy of Shadow and Bone. They are in this like overall region. I would expect for Alina and Mal to try to make an escape on the True Sea and escape the surroundings that the Darkling is controlling. I'm really hoping for a sea battle as well in this one. My favorite book from Throne of Glass is, where is it? Here. It's this one, Empire of Storms. And if you know, you know, but we have an epic sea battle in this one. So I'm kind of expecting the same thing from this one, but I will update you with my thoughts and opinions on Siege and Storm after I finish reading it. I'm filming in the park for the first time. Hopefully you're not able to hear all of the kids screaming right next to me. So I just finished Siege and Storm, and I do have some notes on my phone because this feels like a fever dream, to be honest. It's definitely better than the first one. By how much, I really don't know, because the beginning of this book is action-packed for like the first 3 or 4 chapters, and then it just kind of, nothing really happens until the end of this, which I felt a bit disappointed about. I got what I wanted though. I got a sea battle and we had a dragon that we had to hunt, but I just wish that scene was prolonged on like more chapters, because it feels like the middle of the book is very diluted and we don't get a lot of action. It's just like Alina strolling around and trying to come up with ways to defeat the Darkling, but nothing really actually happens until the end of this one. So I do believe this could have been paced a little bit better, but something just fell on me. Okay. So I do feel that this could have been paced a little bit better, but it is for sure better than the first one, than Shadow and Bone. In terms of the notes that I have on my phone, so Baghra is the mother of the Darkling, and in the first book, Baghra tried to help Alina escape, but because Alina didn't really follow Baghra's plan all the way through, Baghra remained at the little palace, and this is not happening on the page. It's just a scene where Alina goes to see Baghra, and she soon realizes that she has 2 black holes for eyes, so it is implied that the Darkling took out his mom's eyes for some reason. I mean, I know he's the villain, but it just seems a bit weird. I hope this will be explained more in depth in the next book, in the last book, because I feel like there might be a significance to this later. It is also implied that if Alina would absorb the power of the 3rd amplifier that will probably be found in the next book, she will kind of lose sight of herself. In this book, more so than in the first one, it feels like Alina is the complete opposite of the Darkling in terms of their power, but also they feel very similar. Like, they're the only ones in the Grisha world that have this massive power. It just depends on what they want to do with it and the fact that they had different upbringings. Also, something really weird happens. So when they are escaping from the Darkling in that like sea battle that happens very, very rapidly at the beginning of the book, a pirate helps them, and that pirate is none other than the king's son, Nikolai. So in the first book, it is explained that the king has 2 sons. The first one is preparing to be a king, and then the other one is just like studying something. We don't really get any more information on the second son of the king in the first book, but in the second one, we find out that the pirate that helped Alina and Mal escape from the Darkling is actually Nikolai. In this one, the Darkling is not really present, and it just feels a bit weird, because in the first book, Mal was not that present. He was only present at the beginning and at the end, and then in this one, in Siege and Storm, the same thing happens with the Darkling, and then he kind of gets replaced as the second love interest with Nikolai. I honestly feel like Nikolai would be a better love interest for Alina instead of Mal or the Darkling. From the way that Mal is portrayed, I do believe that he is supposed to end up with Alina, but I just hope it's Nikolai, because he kind of did nothing wrong so far. I mean, he did something, but nothing to Alina per se. He just helped her. So we'll see how that goes in the 3rd book. In the last battle from Siege and Storm, Genya makes an appearance and she's disfigured, so it is implied that the Darkling did something to her. I do believe she tried to betray the Darkling and he did something to her, but we don't know for sure, so I'm curious to find out what actually happened to Genya in the next book. If Lee Bardugo knows how to do something, is how to create a massive cliffhanger at the end of these books, because this one ends on a cliffhanger as well. So the Darkling goes to the little palace because the silly queen oversees something, and he's able to make a move to the little palace and to ambush our main characters. What Alina tries to do, she makes the Darkling believe that she will join him. They join their powers, and combined with his powers and with the powers of the first and second amplifier that she has, she is trying to use the Darkling's powers to create these like shadow creatures just to drain him. There's a cute dog. but that also means that she will die as well, together with the Darklings. So that is happening. Genya manages to save Alina from actually using all of her powers and be completely drained. They make an escape with the help of this like religious faction that kind of forms because they believe that Alina is actually a saint. These are my thoughts on Siege and Storm. It's definitely better than the first one. My main issue, as I said before, is with the pacing of this book. I feel like the first couple of chapters should have been like half of this book, and then in the other half we should have like all of the political intrigue and everything that was happening for the majority of this book. I just feel like it could have been paced a little bit better. But that being said, this is not a bad book. It is kind of like the first one truly felt like a 2.5, maybe 3 stars. This feels kind of like a 3.5, 375, something like that. I still didn't rate this one on Goodreads, so I will see to that later. This one didn't really feel as predictable as the first one. What I feel really dumb about for not figuring out sooner is how in each of these books they are supposed to hunt down just like this old ancient amplifier that only exists in the legends from Rothka. So in the first book they hunted down the stag. In this book they are hunting a dragon, and then in the third one, in Ruin and Rising, they're going to hunt down this firebird, it's called in the book, but I'm pretty sure it's a phoenix. I will go grab a coffee now, and hopefully I will be able to start Ruin and Rising while I'm drinking my coffee, so I will see you there. Hi, it is the next day. I have finished reading Ruin and Rising, so I have completed the Grisha trilogy. And also in the meantime, I have read the companion novel, which is Demon in the Wood, but I will be talking about this later after I finish with the trilogy. So this book was actually a nice surprise because With the first two books, you can kind of tell from what I've said so far in the video that I'm not like a massive fan of them. They are not bad by any means. It's just I didn't really connect with the characters that much, with the exception of Nikolai, of course. Nikolai, hands down, my favorite character from this trilogy. Specifically with Ruin and Rising, why I'm saying it's a nice surprise, because we have a plot twist that I didn't see coming, and that is that Mal is the third amplifier. Now, does it actually make sense, and do I believe the explanation? Maybe not. But I do appreciate the fact that it went there. It was a complete surprise. I did not expect that at all. And it also helps Mal's character, because you already know that Mal is not my favorite. It is still not one of my favorite characters after finishing the whole trilogy, but I do appreciate his growth and kind of his purpose throughout the whole series. Now, when I read Siege and Storm, I have said that they found the serpent, not the serpent, what is it, the dragon. They have found the dragon, which is the second amplifier, very, very quickly with the help of Mal. But I felt like that was something that could have been improved. Like the pacing of that I didn't really like. I thought it was too quick for how sought after these creatures were. But in Ruin and Rising, it is actually explained that Mal was able to find the first and second amplifiers so quickly because, and this is Lee Bardugo's favorite thing to say throughout the whole trilogy, like calls to like, and because Mal is an amplifier himself, he was able to track the other two. Is it still very convenient for the plot of the story? Yes, but I appreciate that Lee Bardugo took the time to actually explain why the other two amplifiers were found so quickly in the other two books. We get a bit more information on Jenya's character. Jenya is a tailor that helps Alina in the first book, and then in the second one she kind of takes a step back. She's not that present in the second one, but in the third one we get to see more of Jenya, and Jenya is one of those characters that you really empathize with. We get the explanation why she was poisoning the king in, I think it was in the first one, in Shadow and Bone. It is hinted upon the fact that the king has this disease that's incurable, it cannot be treated. So because Genia is good with poisons, it was implied that she was poisoning the king, but we didn't really know why. We thought it's because of the Darkling, like the Darkling made Genia to do this, but in fact we find out that it's actually not the case, and Genia was poisoning the king because the king was essaying her. Basically, she did this thing where she would put poison on her skin, and every single time the king would touch her, he would absorb that poison, and over time it became untraceable. When Nikolai finds out that the king did this to Genya, he actually makes his dad abdicate and makes him flee the kingdom, so that once they defeat the Darkling, Nikolai can become king. Nikolai is one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character from this whole trilogy. So how does this whole trilogy conclude? We find out that Mal is the third amplifier, and Alina is taken aback by this because she would actually have to kill Mal to use his power as an amplifier. They're having this last battle with the Darkling. Alina realizes the fact that she cannot actually defeat the Darkling on her own, and she would need to kill Mal. She kills Mal, she kills the Darkling afterwards, and then Mal is brought back to life. Now, did I wish, for a tiny bit, but did I wish Mal would have stayed dead? Yes, but I also understand the choice for bringing him back to life. Even though Mal and Alina are not characters that I really resonated with in the first and second book, I'm just happy for them that they ended up together. Now, after reading these three books, what are my thoughts on the series overall? I had fun reading it, and I also understand the fact that this is geared towards a younger YA audience. So the plot devices that are used and the tropes that are used makes sense for that demographic. If you are an adult fantasy reader, it feels a bit diluted and a bit simplified, but that's kind of the idea of these books. Where Lee Bardugo shines with these books is creating meaningful character relationships and make us as readers care for the characters. Genya, Nikolai, Zoya, God, I cannot wait to see Nikolai again in the King of Scars duology. Now let's talk about the graphic novel Demon in the Wood that's written by Lee Bardugo and illustrated by Danny Pendergast. Spoiler free for this one. So this is marketed to be the Darkling's origin story, and that's not actually the case. It's more so a scene from the Darklings and his mom's past in a time where Grisha were hunted and ostracized by the people. And after the events of this book, there's this seed that gets planted into Alexander's mind. That's kind of why he became the Darkling, the leader of the Second Army, because he wants to create this better future for the Grisha. I want to talk a bit about the art style in this. So the actual art style is not necessarily something that I gravitate towards. I don't really know how to put it into words. It's just not necessarily my thing. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the color scheme a lot. It's actually very interesting because at the beginning where the Darkling feels, I don't know if naive would be the correct word to describe him at the beginning, but he definitely feels very childlike. There is an event that happens very close to the end of this book, and that's what is considered to be the catalyst for who Alexander becomes. The color scheme actually shifts. So at the beginning of the book, it's more like blue and green, and then it kind of shifts towards a lot of muted reds and oranges and stuff like that. And then towards the end of the book, it becomes this purple hue that's on the cover of the book as well. So that's kind of to signify who Alexander will become. The last thing that I want to point out about this book, in the acknowledgements, Lee Bardugo says, I wrote this story sometime in 2013 during the lead up of the release of Rune and Rising, the final book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. Is it a hero, origin story, or a villain's? I've never been able to see Alexander as purely one or the other. He is a survivor who dreams of safety for his people. He is a tyrant who brutalizes and exploits those who trust him most. If Ravka were a different country, if he'd been raised by a different mother, if his mother had been raised by a different mother, well, who knows what might have been. I really liked that she said that because in the actual trilogy, we get this feeling that Alina and the Darkling, even though they're completely different in how they think, they could have been similar if they had similar upbringing. So yeah, I'm really happy with where this book went. Okay, that being said, this is the end of today's video. Please let me know in the comments down below what are your thoughts on the Shadow and Bone trilogy overall. If you have read it right when it came out, or if you read it recently like I did. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will probably see you in the next one. Bye everyone!